Hey guys, this is Jax, and today I wanted to give you guys a little tarot hack, something that you can use to fundamentally shift your understanding of how tarot works and how the cards connect to each other. The number one technique, I believe, is taking the first 10 major arcana and connecting them to the first 10 minor arcana of each suit and understanding the way in which they actually correlate with each other. So, for example, we take the Magician card. The Magician card is the concept of this raw potential in the four corners of our life, and by utilizing this potential, being able to bridge the divine with the earthly and connecting those together. So when you think of the Magician, think of it almost as an equation where you say the Magician is equal to the Ace of Swords plus the Ace of Wands plus the Ace of Cups plus the Ace of Coins. And the reason for that is because these are the raw materials of these four different directions brought together, equaling the Magician. Hey guys, in order to go a little bit deeper into the tarot hack that we talked about yesterday, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the minor arcana in particular. So when we're looking at the four minor arcana, we have, for example, the Ace of Swords. The Ace of Swords is this concept of this new idea, this new thought process, this basically divinely inspired information that has come down from the heavens in a way. And it's sort of affected the way that we think. We then have the Ace of Wands, which is, of course, that inspired, the divinely inspired connection to action, the knowing that we must take some kind of new action of some kind, though the journey doesn't necessarily begin at the aces yet. The Ace of Cups is the unrefined, raw emotion, whether it is bliss or rapture or ecstasy, love, all of these different emotions that are not yet formulated in the reasoning of why or how. And then we have the Ace of Coins, which is the raw material, the raw potential in the physical realm. Hey guys, so to go a little bit further into what we were talking about yesterday with these 5 cards equaling each other, we have to understand that for the Magician to successfully connect the divine with the earthly, he has to master these 4 particular areas of his life. So what's so important is being able to understand that the Magician, if, say, for example, when the Magician receives the Ace of Swords, a divinely inspired information, or at least the awareness that there's something more to learn, if the Magician is only set, let's just say, in the Ace of Coins part of his life, the Ace of Cups part of his life, maybe he is very financially successful, maybe he has a great relationship, and perhaps he even jumps on action as they come, but when it comes to his own knowing, he's incredibly held back or he pushes it away, then he has lacked balance of these 4 corners and is unable to complete his role as the Magician. And this will apply to all the major arcana. Hey guys, so for the tarot hack of the day, we are now looking at the second major arcana, which is the High Priestess. With the High Priestess energy, we're going to be looking at the High Priestess is equal to the Two of Swords plus the Two of Wands plus the Two of Cups plus the Two of Coins. And to understand a little bit more, you have to take the High Priestess as the ideal. So the High Priestess is this concept of man's knowledge being in balance with sort of this divine, untamed knowledge, the connection to the darkness, the connection to the light, the understanding of the shadow, the understanding of the evolved self. So it's these things being in harmony and being in balance. That's what makes the High Priestess so powerful and so in tune with her magic, is not only the understanding of the power of the moon, but the understanding of the power of the sun and understanding how these things come together. So when we have the 2 numerology, High Priestess or the other twos, we have the internal force and the external force. So for today's tarot hack, we're going to be going a little bit deeper into the High Priestess energy, which is this internal force being met with an external force and seeing how those things coexist with each other in balance. And so when you think of the High Priestess, you think of the High Priestess as High Priestess equals Two of Swords plus Two of Wands plus Two of Cups plus Two of Coins. These things all being in balance with each other creates the High Priestess energy. So those things all coming together. Rewinding back to the Magician for a second, you have the seed, the one numerology, the raw material. It is unpolished and at the same time incredibly powerful. So when you think of the 2 numerology, the High Priestess and the two of the minor arcanas, think of it as this is the sunlight in the water, the internal force, the seed, and the external force that is happening to the seed, and the way that they coexist with each other. Hey guys, for today's tarot hack, I wanted to talk to you guys about the Empress card and the 3 numerology. Following the pattern that we've had so far, the Empress card is, of course, number 3, and the Empress card is equal to the 3 of Swords, the 3 of Wands, the 3 of Cups, and then the 3 of Coins, all combined together, sort of in harmony. That essence is what creates the 3 numerology. It's what creates the Empress. So these things all being in balance. So the Empress, being a creator, is often connected to pregnancy, which would be, of course, the masculine and the feminine coming together, just like the 1 and the 2 numerology coming together and creating a new life, creating something brand new. The Empress uses the materials that currently exist with her own skills in the external reality to bring something new into the world. Hey guys, so for today's tarot hack, I want to go a little bit deeper into the 3 numerology and the Empress card. I'm going to have to take probably a couple more videos for this particular concept because the 3 of Swords honestly could have its own video. So with the 3 numerology, this is where basically the 1 numerology, the self or the raw material of a particular essence or a particular ideal, is then interacting with the outside world, the 2 numerology. And the 2 of these put together creates the 3. So that's why the 3 is the true beginning of the journey. The ace of a particular suit often is referred to as the new beginning, but that's not the reality. The reality is the ace is just the material itself or the character. The 2 is then the external call to action. Often in the story, the ace is like, we're introduced to all the main characters of the story. The 2 is then the conflict that comes up, and the 3 is the beginning of the call to action. Now, following this and going a little bit further into it, we start off with the 3 of Swords. Then we, of course, have the 3 of Wands, the 3 of Cups, and then the 3 of Coins. So with these 3 numerologies, this is often where something actually begins. The 3 of Coins here. So with 3 of Swords, oftentimes we view this as the divorce card. That's how it's, commonly referred to. And the thing that's problematic about it is that the 3 of Swords absolutely represents usually the end of a relationship. However, from that point of view, then it suggests that all this card does is it warns us of something terrible that's about to happen. When in reality, this is the beginning of an adventure. So how could that be? Well, it's the beginning of the adventure, the beginning of you finally being yourself, a singular entity, once again, after having gone through the 2 process of connecting and merging with another person. Now, the problem with this mindset about the 3 of Swords is that we're treating it as though this other person is defining to us, that this other person is why we exist, or that this other person is part of our definition, our individual definition. So with the 3 of Swords, of course, this is going to be the beginning of your journey as a severed identity. This is going to be your philosophy moving forward now, your existence, your mind, your spirit moving forward. Then, of course, when we get to the 3 of Wands, this is where action truly starts. This is the first steps of some sort of physical journey, a journey in career, a journey where something is changing, and it's often passion-based or based on the heart space. Then you have the 3 of Cups. This is where new emotions bubble forward. This is where new opportunities, you begin to finally recognize and realize what's really happening there, but you begin to feel it instead of just knowing about it. And the 3 of Coins is often the beginning of a long-term project, usually a financial one or career-related. So for the Empress, if she is going to be at peace with the creation process, not just the creativity in an artistic sense, but also the mechanical process of actually the creation of life, or the creation of sort of this quintessence of a new ideal using the materials that are there, rather than being bogged down by the severance process and all the things that she doesn't have or all the things that she lost. She instead uses that power of creation to take the things that currently do exist that she does have access to and to bring them all together. So she knows when her identity is her identity. She knows when it's time to actually take action. She knows when she needs to recognize emotionally what's really going on with her. And she knows when she needs to start a long-term project that she is not going to get credit for, likely, that she won't get any sort of accolades for with the 3 of Coins. So if she has all of those in balance, she is being the Empress. Hey guys, for today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Emperor card as well as the Four Numerology. Following the same pattern as before, the numerology of the major arcana, in this case the fourth one, the Emperor, is directly connected to the four suits of the minor arcana with the corresponding numerology. In this case, the Four of Swords, the Four of Wands, the Four of Cups, and the Four of Coins. So when these four minor arcana are in a state of mastery, they create the Emperor. And just as before, we talked about the Empress, which is, basically the mastered feminine. The Emperor is the mastered masculine. With the Empress card, we look at basically the mastered Taurus, her ability to use resourcefulness and adaptation. With the Emperor card, we basically take a look at evolution. So with the mastered masculine, the mastered Aries archetype, we can see how this independent being took on responsibility in order to be able to provide for other people. The Emperor character, we're going to talk a little bit more about this concept of the Emperor card for today's tarot hack, which is the Emperor is not a character who barks out orders and just commands everyone to do things. That would be the Emperor character sort of taken to its extreme, taken towards the more tyrant energy. But with the Emperor, this is a character who's able to keep structure in order in a positive way by first having mastered his own strengths, having been able to sort of create structure within his family to a degree, within his friends groups, within his social circles, and then of course within a more societal context. So with the Emperor card, this is about using power responsibly. At least that's what it's supposed to be about. That's what the message is trying to impart, using power in its most responsible way possible. For today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Emperor card and the Four Numerology. And for the first of the Four Numerology, we have the Four of Swords. And Four of Swords is going to be, once again, the Emperor is connected to this idea of the creation of true stability. So Four of Swords is going to be about our mental health. It's going to be about, often there's this connection to restfulness, taking a vacation, working on our sleep cycle, working on making sure that we have, enough sort of relaxation. But it's not random. It's because essentially if we have this mental structure, this mental stability, and we're taking care of our mental health and not treating it as if it's some sort of like optional thing that maybe we can worry about once we have a little bit more time on our hands, then we'll be able to become and emulate this Emperor archetype in its true nature. Now for today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Four of Wands, which is the next of the Four Numerology that is connected to creating the Emperor once combined with the Four of Swords, the Cups, and the Coins. So for this Emperor character, in his stability and the creation of the order, essentially within his realm, within his kingdom, within his society, the Four of Wands is talking about the Emperor sort of as this personal character, but also as the Emperor within us. Four of Wands is the structure and stability that we can glean from our family. Now this family can be, the us getting married and actually starting a family. This family can be the family we're of course born with, or it can be our secondary family that we sort of create along the way. But this is about the way in which we're living to bring structure and stability to our family and the way that they bring that to us as well. And without that key piece, then we don't have what it takes. Now for today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Four of Cups. The Four of Cups is a type of emotional stability that's going to be required, as well as a spiritual stability that we're going to need as well in order to reach this Emperor archetype. So with the Four of Cups in particular, we often know the story behind this one, which is that someone has three cups that are around them. Perhaps that represents their family, their friends, and their current opportunities, and they've got one cup that's off in the distance. They look over as if it's the grass is greener over there. And I think a lot of times that there's this negative connotation that's given to the character where it's suggesting he's ungrateful because he doesn't recognize the three cups around him. At the same time, there's also this lack of ingenuity or a lack of opportunity that can be found here if you recognize that his aspirations towards another ideal is not necessarily going to harm the three cups that are currently around him. Four of Coins, the final Four Numerology that makes up the Emperor, This is not just about having his finances in order, which the Four of Coins, of course, representing the financial stability, whether it represents that we'd work at a job in particular. We have a particular career that we believe is incredibly safe, and it gives us sort of a structure and stability to continue to move, up these branches. We continue to move up to these different levels. With the Four of Coins, though, this also can become a dangerous spot where people rest too long. So Four of Coins might be being in a job that you're comfortably working in and you're, receiving exactly what you were promised, but nothing's going to move next. Nothing's going to happen after that. There is no promotion that's waiting around the corner. So for this Emperor character, he has to understand when it's time to, engage with this and when it's time finally to leave this energy. With the Four Numerology and the Emperor, if we're looking at this character and we're looking at becoming this Emperor ideal, we're looking at representing it, our mental health, our connection with our family and with our close relationship, our spiritual health, as well as our ability to have a stable relationship with our dreams, a stable relationship with our desires and our true wants, as well as a stable relationship with not just the literal finances, but the way that we're getting them, the way that we're sort of moving in that direction. All of these things combined creates the Emperor character. And that is the optimal way that the Emperor can possibly express its own archetype. And in the next card we're going to move on to the Hierophant, and when we get to the Five Numerology, this is where things really get interesting and the story starts to shake up quite a bit. For today's tarot hack, what I want to do is just take a recap of what we've covered so far in the numerology. The reason I want to do that now especially is because next we're moving into the Five Numerology, where we hit the fifth major arcana, the Hierophant. And for the 1 through 4, we're looking at, of course, in the beginning, the Magician card, which is our raw potential. This is where we have raw potential in the 4 directions of our life, and each and every one of us is born with limitless possibilities, with so many different things we can become in life. And as we continue to move through life, that sort of path begins to narrow a little bit, and we have to start to find what it is that we're going to seek mastery in. Now, when we get to the High Priestess, which is the second numerology, this is where the raw potential is met with an external influence. It's met with something that comes from outside. So just as the High Priestess often has the pillars of Boaz and Yakin, representing basically the knowledge that man has gained and or created and or structured versus the wild knowledge that comes from nature and it comes from the universe, the subconscious and the conscious, the masculine, the feminine. Basically, we have to look at these opposing forces working together and coming together as a couple to reach the 3 numerology, which is the Empress, which leads into creation. So the 3 numerology is, of course, the imperfect creation. Often it's the creation that comes from not necessarily having everything that's needed, but having some of the materials and being able to kind of make it work, to put them together in order to create something. And it's just the beginning of the journey when we hit the 3 numerology. That's where things truly actually start to move in the physical world and start to, take place, and we start to take notice of them. But we have to be willing to create imperfectly. We have to be willing to have something happen that is not exactly what we envisioned at first, at least. And then, of course, we reach the 4 numerology, where we have structure. And so an example of this might be, you take the Ace of Wands. The Ace of Wands might be the recognition that you need a new job. And so the 2 of Wands would, of course, then be the contemplation and the connecting with the outside sources, putting out resumes in different places, talking to different people, taking some of the action necessary. And then the 3 numerology would be going in for the interview and or starting the first day of the job, depending on kind of the timing on how the rest of the reading looks and the spread. But when we get to the 3 numerology, that's where things have begun. And the 4 numerology would be basically getting the job and or getting comfortable at said job. And then we move on to the 5 numerology, which we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about the Hierophant, and we're going to talk about the 5 minor arcana that come with it. For today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the 5 numerology and going into that and talking about the major arcana, the Hierophant. The Hierophant card is, of course, of the Five Numerology, and it connects to the Five of Swords, Five of Wands, Five of Cups, and Five of Coins. And in the Five Numerology, after just having done this recap before about how, you know, in the 1 through 4, we kind of start the journey, we sort of find our original material, we couple up with someone or with a different external force, we then sort of have our imperfect beginning of the journey, and we begin to get used to things. We begin to find structure in the 4. Once we hit 5, this is where things are shaken up. This is usually where there's an external dissonance of some kind, some sort of difficulty that arrives on the path. Now, the problem with this is that if we look at the Five Numerology as problematic, then it starts to skew our mindset about what's being read here as basically something bad is going to happen. Something bad's going to happen in the swords. It's something bad's going to happen in the coins with our financial life. It can feel as though it's foreshadowing something negative, but the reality is once we get to the 6 numerology, you'll see that what happened in the 5 was incredibly necessary. And so that's the part that sometimes gets missed with the 5 numerology, as well as the rest of the odds, really. With the 3, the 5, the 7, these 3 tend to be viewed or characterized as negative events, when in reality they're times in which something is usually cut away in order to make room for something better. So just like with the 3 being our imperfect beginning, you know, this imperfect beginning was necessarily imperfect so that we could actually develop structure, because structure can't just fall out of the sky. It can't just happen immediately. So when we get to the 5 numerology here and we talk about the Hierophant, and we're going to do a few videos on this, the Hierophant is about being able to be charitable to other people, being able to be a pillar for other people. And of course, that is the mastered 5, right? Because in 5, we experience something difficult happening. And to be able to be strong during that time, or to be able to give that strength to other people, or to, you know, sort of shield them from the storm, that's our ultimate mastered self. So with the 5 of the minor arcana, we're going to be going into that next, and we're going to be talking about how oftentimes these are moments that are looked at as, you know, 5 of coins, classically, you're going to go through financial hardship. It's not actually what it's recommending. What it's explaining in the tarot card is that you are going to experience a deficit from what you originally projected was going to happen. Now, what you do with that, once you realize the projection was just an illusion, will lead you into the 6 of coins. In this tarot hack, we're going to continue where we left off before, talking about the Hierophants and talking about the 5 numerology. So keeping the metaphor of the plant in mind, with the 1 we had the seed, with the 2 it was watered and it began to grow, but it was under the surface and it was not visible to the outside world. In the 3 we begin to sprout up, we become connected with the outside world. In the 4 we become a fully established plant in a way. You know, it's not a mighty tree or anything, but it's a sproutling. It's out there and there's a level of structure to it. In the 5 numerology, this is where we have a windstorm happen, or we have some animal, walk on the plant, something that disturbs it, something that creates difficulty. It removes a few of the leaves. It removes one of the potential branches. Now, what happens in the 6 numerology is because of this removal, because of this loss from what the plant originally intended or was trying to do, that's what allows nutrients to flow into what is still there and to become the greatest plant it possibly can, to basically become abundant, because the 6 numerology is that of abundance. So when we have the Hierophant card, this is often going to be a time where we're in the position or the role of providing structure or tradition or something that is stable and secure for other people, because it's the mastered 5. Whereas in the 5 of Swords, this is going to be a time where we've got, we're dead set on this plan. We've got this idea of how we want things to go. And, we start to get some external influence. We have someone say that our idea is problematic, or our idea is not going to work. And, when that happens, we have to be able to sift through this and sift through the confusion. It can be really distressing, especially if the person saying this idea isn't going to work is someone that we really trust or respect. And when we get to the 5 of Wands, this is often, sort of symbolic of play fighting or, sparring matches. Basically, in the 5 of Wands, we tend to have some chaos come up in our life, just after the celebration of structure that we had in the Four of Wands. So with the Five of Wands, we have sort of this play fight, or we have this sparring match that happens, and this is trying to prepare us for our, Six of Wands moment, the moment of ultimate victory, the moment where we sort of have this huge parade because we've been successful in the face of something that seemed impossible to do. So the Five is preparing us. The Five is getting us ready. And so we have to be grateful for the chaos that we're that we experienced during the Five of Wands time, because it's going to give us the roadmap for how we can succeed next time. Five of Cups, this one's the sadness of loss. This one's the sadness of, losing a relationship or losing something that we emotionally were very attached to. And Five of Coins, of course, is the feeling of loss of abundance or loss of money. For this tarot hack, we're going to go over some examples of the minor and major arcana in regards to the Five Numerology. So starting off with the swords, Ace of Swords, we have this brand new idea of, let's just say it's an invention. Two of Swords, we begin weighing it out against what's currently out there versus the idea, the original idea that we were sort of divinely imbued with or divinely inspired by. Three of Swords is going to be the difficulty of the person that we thought was going to be there alongside us. Let's just say it's a business partner, for example, is no longer going to be joining us. So we have this immediate loss that we experience where we think, oh, this idea that I had, it can't happen now. But the reality is the idea is just fine. And once you sort of stabilize from that, then you move into the Four of Swords, where you have basically this sort of calm mental health. You're able to sort of look at the situation objectively. You're able to take a moment to rest. You're able to experience that, yes, the vision has changed a bit, but I am the structure. The structure isn't something that's going to be dependent on these other people here. And then the Five of Swords, that's where you receive some external influence. Sometimes it's the original person who had left the program or left the project begins coming back, or they begin sort of explaining why you should just drop what it is you're trying to do. You should just drop your dream and leave it on the ground, because for whatever motivations they have, they might not want to see you succeed, or they might, have difficulty being able to accept that. But if you're able to get past that, if you're able to truly listen to your own internal compass, you then get to the Six of Swords, where you become clear and abundant in your direction, especially the things that are happening in the mind. Ace of Coins is another example. Ace of Coins, you have this, this particular idea. It's something that you believe that if you invest all of your time in working on it consistently, that you'll be able to make something great. So the Two of Coins becomes the balancing act between what you're currently doing in your daily life and this new concept that has started to consume you passionately. Three of Coins is the moment where you have to really commit, and you have to say, this is the beginning of a long-term journey, me and this investment that I'm making. And in the short term, there will be no payoff at all. No one's going to see any sort of benefits or results from it. This is something that you're going to have to follow through with your internal knowing. And it begins to stabilize at the Four of Coins. Now, when we have the Five of Coins, this is the moment where some of the investment money that we needed to have ready was not available like we thought it was going to be, or there was some sort of difficulty that came up. Now, the thing about that is that once this happens, often it reveals something that's so much greater. So it's not pointless. And that's the whole concept of the Five Numerology. The Five Numerology is not difficulty for the sake of random difficulty. It's difficulty for the sake of pruning away what was incorrect in our original projection or vision. For today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Six Numerology and the Lover's card. The Lover's card, of course, is the amalgam and the connection and conjoining of the Six of Swords, Six of Wands, Six of Cups, and Six of Coins in harmony with each other to create this. Oftentimes, the Lover's card is viewed as a card about relationships, about, specifically a romantic relationship, these two forces joining together, and abundance is an aspect of that. Whereas the way that I would view it would be abundance is the central core ideal, because that's what's being mirrored in the Six Numerology and the six cards, and especially coming after the Five Numerology, and that relationships are an effect of this place of abundance. And what we have to deal with the Six Numerology is the abundance paradox, which is wanting something outside of yourself, wanting that abundance, and then feeling as though, of course, that you're incomplete without it. And ironically, this makes the acquisition of whatever this type of abundance is the most difficult thing in the world to get. So, for example, if you're putting out the energy that you're desperate for a relationship, you're constantly reaching out for a relationship, then getting a relationship is the most difficult thing that you can possibly do. Whereas, of course, if you're in a place where you are totally satisfied with yourself, where self-love isn't just something that is posted on Instagram, it's something you genuinely have within yourself. You have a satisfaction with yourself, as things currently are, then of course, what do you have an abundance of? You have an abundance of different people coming into your life wanting a relationship and feeling that connection. And so it's almost like a snake eating its own tail. And we have to sort of face that paradox. How can I genuinely find within myself this love so that I'm allowing love to finally come to me, rather than how can I reach out to go get love outside of myself, and why is it always permanently eluding me? And it's the same thing with money. You know, if you feel this confidence in yourself that you are what's valuable, then of course external money is very easy to draw into your life. Whereas if you feel poor and you feel that money is something that you don't have, you've never had, then the acquisition of money is incredibly difficult. Even just, taking away the energy aspect of this, you just look at a scientific study that's done on people who smile, right? People who smile, of course, will have more people that gravitate towards them more often, just statistically. People who frown will have less people that gravitate towards them. Of course, the paradox is, if people just gravitated towards me, then I wouldn't be frowning, I would be smiling instead. And so we have to basically find these things within ourselves in order to access this abundance and finally allow this abundance to come in to our life in an external form. Now, continuing on this tarot hack from our last one, we were talking about the Lover's card in the Six Numerology. The Six of Swords is one of our first examples. So, Six of Swords, we have this abundance of clarity, this abundance of direction. We have basically this ideal which will lead to an inner abundance or an outer abundance, or most likely both. So with the Six of Swords, we rewind back the clock to the Ace of Swords. You didn't ask to be divinely inspired, the one numerology. It just basically happened to you. It fell from the sky in some way, and you had this new ideal. Then you hit the Two of Swords, and you became a participant with this material. So you began interacting with the ideal. You started to think, okay, so this is what everyone else has done, and here's my idea. And you then, of course, we hit the Three Numerology, the Three of Swords. So you have stepped then away from the campfire of your friends or your family, or you might even consider society as a concept. So you've stepped away from the known things that all people around you would be able to comfort you and stay alongside you, in sort of that position or in that energy, and you ventured out into somewhere dangerous. So now you're in the unknown. So of course, with the Three Numerology, the unknown is very scary, it's difficult, it feels painful, you feel alone. And then, of course, you hit the Four of Swords. So you took some time basically after you've had your first success with your ideal, or you've had your first confirmation in some way. You feel a sense of mental stability. You feel basically that you've been validated in some way directly from this divine source, whether that's the God or the universe or however you look at it. Then you face the Five of Swords, which is where someone crosses your path in that unknown place when you're vulnerable, and they begin sending this different, sort of ideal your way, or they try and contradict your idea, and they try and influence what it is you think. And the Six of Swords is you basically having the trust and the faith in yourself and in that divine connection to this divine ideal, and then you follow it, and you follow it with faith and trust, which of course next is going to lead us to the Seven Numerology, which is where we have risk that we're going to be taking. But that's what we'll get to next time. In the Six of Wands numerology, right, Six of Wands, we then step into the ideal of victory. And so we have to allow ourselves to be celebrated once we've achieved victory. After being grateful for the Five of Wands, the difficulty that made us, that basically showed us how we could harden ourselves in some way. The Five of Wands showed us how it is that we need to move forward and assert ourselves in life. It showed us the different ways in which we can love and respect ourselves enough to take action. And then, of course, that leads us to the Six of Wands. So rather than complaining about the Five of Wands and how that felt, stepping into the Six of Wands is finally thanking the universe for the Five of Wands in the first place. Last tarot hack we talked about we continued on the six numerology, the Lover's card, Six of Swords and Six of Wands. So now we move into the Six of Cups. And so once again, sort of hearkening back to the original ideal of abundance, allowing something to be discovered within yourself and seeking it out within yourself so that you're finally allowing it to come from outside. Six of Cups is a perfect example. Six of Cups is where we're looking back at things nostalgically. And sometimes that's a really beautiful, positive thing, right? It's sort of almost engaging with the childhood memories we have, or with things that we experienced during childhood which were positive, and being sort of in that same emotional state, or being in a place of supreme regret and wishing we could go back to that spot. Now, in the Five of Cups, of course, we experienced something very emotionally difficult. We experienced something where we felt empty, or we felt as though basically we were drowning in our sorrows. And so the Six of Cups is bringing up this same concept. Let's say, for example, you want to engage more with your inner child, or with basically this more passionate side of you, this more loving side of you, this more emotionally in tuned side of you. You want to do that, but currently you're caught up in the Five of Cups, or in even the Five of Cups and Five of Wands happening at the same time. So you take everything in life so seriously, and you feel as though you're chained to needing to accomplish something before you can finally, both literally or metaphorically, go on vacation, right? So you're caught up in this concept that I have to work, and then I'll be allowed. I will finally have access to feeling fun and excitement and all these different things. But the reality is you have to be able to find that within yourself, and to be able to, work hard towards your goals at the same time. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's the only way where you'll be able to truly access that. Because if both literally and or metaphorically you go on vacation after all of this hard work, and you feel as though you'll just be able to just switch off all of that seriousness that you've been caught up in, or that sort of emptiness that was purveying your life, now you're going to be on vacation with these same exact repeating patterns and same thoughts. So making your life a vacation in a way, while still manifesting, while still working towards what it is you're doing, while still taking these actions, is imperative to the understanding of abundance and that connection. And then the most straightforward one of them all, Six of Coins. This one usually will be in the form of literal gifts, literal financial raises, literal financial boons of some kind that come directly after the Five of Coins. Sometimes the Five of Coins will manifest as you only have enough money to invest in a particular thing, but someone you know needs help, and you end up helping them out, and you take the leap of faith on it, and then Six of Coins shows some unexpected thing comes forward as sort of a congratulations or abundance. Hey guys, so for today's tarot hack, I want to talk about the Seven Numerology as well as the Chariot and the concept of this card. And so if we rewind back to the Five Numerology, where we were faced with some sort of loss, and then we had to accept it, make peace with it, understand it, and be able to integrate it into our lives, then we were able to move into the Six Numerology, and move into the numerology of abundance, and with joining with other forces and with things coming together. So with the Seven Numerology, this is where we then are put into a position to risk it all. So the Seven Numerology is incredibly important because we have to trust ourselves to make the right choice, or we have to trust another person. There is always going to be some risk involved with the Seven Numerology, and so we have to make the right risk or take the right chance. But no matter what, there is going to be serious movement that happens at a very fast pace in the Seven Numerology, and with the Chariot in particular. For today's tarot hack, I want to go a little bit further into the Seven Numerology and talk about the Chariot as well as the Seven of Swords, Seven of Wands, Seven of Cups, and Seven of Coins. So with the Chariot card, we have movement in our life. We have basically this fast-moving ideal, something that we actually desired, Six Numerology, the abundance that we had, is now coming into fruition towards the greater Eight. And so the idea of the Eight is what we're going to be talking about next. But in the Seven, this is the path that takes us to that Eight place. It's the path that takes us to the secondary foundation and towards our greatness. Now, in the Seven Numerology, though, we have a few things that we have to contend with, which is, of course, trusting the people that we're putting our faith into. So a lot of times the Seven of Swords is viewed as a card that's about someone trying to steal our idea, or someone that's trying to take from us that we have to watch out for, someone who is in some way vampiric. And in actuality, I mean, there are absolutely going to be times where someone will intentionally have this sort of mindset. But what we have to look at with the Seven Numerology is that some people have good intentions and they just don't know how to connect with us. They don't know how to be productive alongside us, or they don't know these things, and it gives us an opportunity to communicate what it is that we do want out of that connection. However, there's other times where there's a point at which you'll have to make the choice to remove this person from your life, to set that sort of final boundary. And if you're unable to do that, they're certainly not going to do it themselves. So with that 3 numerology, we had to make a choice for the imperfect beginning. We had to choose to do something that was going to be difficult and that was going to take us out of our comfort zone. In the 5 numerology, something happened to us. And in the 7 numerology, we have to happen to something. So we have to make a choice. Are we going to cut out something that isn't working in our life? Are we going to take that risk? Because we might even feel a certain foundation or a certain safety around it. Just like with seven of wands, 7 numerology for this, oftentimes 7 of wands will come up when you're having trouble finding a job after a long period of time, and so you're just trying to get something to fit into place. But with the seven of wands, of course, you have to be comfortable not knowing exactly how something is going to manifest in your life. You have to be able to release some of that, basically the desire to sort of control the situation and understand each and every part and its timing, because you won't have that control. And not having that control is the most uncomfortable thing possible, but it's what you'll have to face in order to get to that 8 of wands and in order to get to a higher plane. With the 7 of cups, this is emotional surprises, and we have to be able to trust ourselves to be able to discern what's really going on here, because often it's very cloudy. And then, of course, 7 of coins. 7 of coins is going to be a financial risk that we take after having just made a breakthrough in the 6 of coins. Guys, so for today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the 8 numerology, in this particular case, the Justice card, as well as the 8 of the minor arcana in connection with it. So with the 8 numerology, we have a secondary type of structure. So just as we reach structure with the 4 numerology, especially structure in terms of what is expected of us, maybe from our parents or from society, the 4 numerology is the classic structure. The 8 numerology is the divine structure. It's the secondary level. So it's often associated with the student master archetype, or it's associated with secondary education or higher learning of some kind, whether it's independently created or done in a classic sort of academic setting. The 8 numerology is what leads us to, essentially, after having moved through the 7 numerology and that risk and that trust and that movement, being able to bring that into a place of stability that we've created for ourselves. On with the 8 numerology and the 8 of the minor arcana. So for some examples, we have first the 8 of swords. 8 of swords, of course, connected to this justice concept, because after we had the abundance at the 6, we had clarity, and the 7 of swords came. We had to essentially trust our own decision making. We either had to trust another person or trust that we had what it takes without them. So in the 8 of swords, we have to confront all of the ways in which we've limited ourselves intellectually. We've said that we have some limitation, something that we can't accomplish. We have to face that and confront it so that we can then break through and set a higher ideal. And with the, just like with the 6 of wands, we had some sort of great victory, and that led us to the 7 of wands, where after our great victory, there was silence. And during that silence, we then had to basically trust that we are the victory, that we have what it takes once something greater comes along. And if we were able to stay that way, the 8 of wands is where we then set a higher ideal for ourselves. So maybe we set off on this journey having this expectation of the 6 being the greatest possible accomplishment, and then only to be confronted with the silence of the 7, and then to be confronted with the 8 numerology of the 8 of wands. And being able to say, you know what, not only have I accomplished this, not only could I accomplish this, but I can accomplish something of a far greater magnitude. And then 8 of cups, of course, this is where we have to choose to walk away from a situation, walk away from a relationship, or walk towards it and make our final decision. We have to make that decision in a very powerful, emotional way, because once we hit 7 of cups, where we were surprised by something we didn't expect, especially after coming from that abundance of positive emotion in the Six of Cups, then we reach the Eight of Cups. And so we essentially have to be fully honest. And so the honesty that comes with the Eight of Cups is, incredibly difficult, because some situations in life are not so black and white. It's not so much that there's a problem that this person caused or this person caused. Sometimes that neither person actually intentionally caused a problem. Neither person meant for something to go the wrong way. But in the Eight of Cups, there are sometimes where we have to recognize that you'll have to walk away from a situation that isn't working, even though there's no bad blood or there's no ill intentions that are there. So that's what makes it almost like the sacred maturity emotionally, is being able to understand when something isn't right, even if no one means to do something wrong. And for the Eight of Coins, oftentimes this will directly correlate to a new type of education that you take on, specifically because that skill or that education you bring in brings in some sort of new skill set that's valuable in a way. And so in the Seven of Coins, we risk it all. We take all of that abundance from the Six of Coins, we risk it all, and we can potentially reach the Eight of Coins, which is the secondary structure, the secondary foundation of the divine nature. Today's tarot hack, we're going to be doing a recap of what we've covered so far in the first numerology through the 8 numerology. In the 1 numerology, we faced basically the raw material or a core essence of ourself that is representative of the beginning of a journey. The journey hasn't actually started yet, but this is basically the idea to go on one. Usually when we get to then the 2 numerology, that's where we have basically someone in our life that is either working with us in a positive way, or they're working antagonistically, sort of against us, but the second person is necessary, this external influence is necessary so that it triggers us to basically make a decision and do something. And then in the 3 numerology, that's where we have our imperfect beginning of the journey. So we set off and we start working towards what we're working on. We know it's a long-term commitment the moment that we've left our comfort zone. However, we feel, a sense of optimism or a sense of strength in basically not despite the pain, but almost because of the pain that it brings up in us, and our recognition that we're able to handle that. Now, once we get to the 4 numerology, we have some sort of structure. We've kind of gotten used to things, especially within the classic view of the world. We're within boundaries still of what we expect and what we know, but we know things are about to change pretty significantly. So the 5 is going to be our first sort of trial and tribulation. That's where difficulty befalls us in some way. Usually it's from an external force, but we have to be able to recognize that difficulty and recognize our ability to transcend it in order to get to the 6 numerology, which is where we have abundance. So if we can be the same us that we really are, even while we're in a difficult situation, if we can be the same us that we really are, even when faced with these different challenges, then we are able to ascend to that 6 numerology and that concept of abundance. So once we have the abundance, of course, sometimes it will feel like I'm either in a 5 or a 6. I'm either in a good place in my life right now, or I'm in a really depressive place right now. And that's one of the illusions that comes up, is that we have to sort of switch to be one or the other. And you might say that true happiness and true abundance comes when you're able to be sad, even when you're also still happy, to be able to be both. And there's no limitation on that. Now, once we get to the 7 numerology, this is going to be where we then have to risk the abundance that we just gained. And there's part of us that has to reface that initial fear that we had, and the fear that the trial and tribulation is coming back. But once we get to the 8, that's because we've taken some sort of risk in the 7. We trusted ourselves. Sometimes we make a mistake, but we reach the 8 when we know who we are. That's where we then create our secondary structure and a new formation of how we view ourselves in the world around us. The last tarot hack, where we talked about the recap of the 1 numerology through the 8 numerology, now we are looking at the 9 numerology. So after the 8 numerology, where we have secondary structure, this is not the end of the story, of course. We've prepared ourselves, we've recreated ourselves in some way. However, the 9 is kind of going to be this final moment before the final test. So in the 9 numerology, this is where the hermit character is a character that has to go off into the wilderness at nighttime. It's sort of metaphorical and literal at the same time. We have to go to this unknown place. We have to ask ourselves the real questions that we've been wondering about this whole time, the big questions, if you will. in what way should I behave? In what way should I move forward in life? In what way should I handle this huge situation that's before me? But in this particular moment, in the Nine Numerology, this is where you have to be the one to be the progenitor of the answer. You have to be the one who finds the answer, listening to your intuition, your internal lantern, which is often, featured in this card. So with that, we start thinking about in what things would we face. And so the Nine of Swords is, of course, the test of being able to face our fears. In order to actually accomplish that great deed, that sort of divine task that we might feel we're imbued with in this lifetime, we have to be able to face our fears, because without that, we're unable to move forward. We will always have some sort of stopping point if our mind is limited in that way. And then, of course, the Nine of Wands, whose banner am I waving here? Like the friends, the allies, the company that you work for, the marriage that you're in. Are you waving a banner for a person or group of people that you're proud of and that you really want to be aligned with? Is part of you questioning your loyalty, and have you started to see things from a different perspective now? Nine of Cups is the most interesting. This one's often the wishes being fulfilled. And so the funny thing is, we have to not get in the way, get in our own way of our happiness, and we have to allow good things to come into our life. We have to allow ourselves to actually accept the goodness and not treat the goodness with suspicion, and to allow ourselves to step into that emotional place where we're able to manifest what it is we desire in this lifetime. And that is, it's an incredibly emotional and spiritual experience. And then finally, the Nine of Coins. As far as the things you have and the things that you're working towards, Nine of Coins calls us to reevaluate what actually is important in regards to my finances, or in regards to my family or my friends. What do I need? And being able to answer that honestly. Hey guys, so for this tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the 10 numerology and the Wheel of Fortune. We're going to be going over this, which is going to conclude the first 50 out of the 78 cards and understanding the way in which they're linked together. Never having touched on any of the conventional meanings, because we can get to all that later. You can see the conventional meanings everywhere with any video about tarot that you watch. But for the Wheel of Fortune, this is going to represent sacred change, because the moment we get to 10, which feels like the conclusion is a new beginning. Every time we've concluded anything in our life, it then has begun something else. So there's no such thing as a full ending, because each ending is sort of the nutrients that a new beginning needs to thrive. And if we follow the metaphor of the plant and sort of reaching to the highest places we can, this is the moment of propagation where new plants begin to sprout. Further into the 10 numerology for this tarot hack, we're going to be looking at the Wheel of Fortune, which is where we experience a radical change in our life. And so a lot of times people think the Wheel of Fortune is inherently good card, meaning essentially you win the lottery or everything gets better in life. But more so, it's that everything's about to go through a climactic shift the same way the seasons do. This is the turning of the wheel. This is the evolution of the pterodactyl into the eagle. So this is a change. It's different. It's not about being better or worse. It's about things changing because of the actions you've taken. That's why the 10 numerology is either going to be something that you experience as incredibly beautiful or incredibly brutal. And if it's incredibly brutal, it's just because of what happened at the 9 numerology. And so we're going to get into that. So with the 10 of Swords, this is the sacred realization where intellectually you have completed your quest in a way and a new one is beginning. However, if in the 9 of Swords you hadn't, let's say, faced your fears, you hadn't gone through that phase, you sort of skipped over that or just sort of pushed down or suppressed your fears, these are something that's going to come up in the 10 of Swords in a brutal realization. Now, if you faced your fears, then when you get to the 10 of Swords, this is a painful, but at the same time beautiful, artistic realization that things are moving on, even though it's not the way you originally envisioned back when you had that Ace of Swords, divination or that divine inspiration. 10 of Wands, this is the point at which you've succeeded at something. You're essentially at the top of the mountain, but there's this question that was supposed to have been brought up in the 9 of Wands where you were asking yourself, Are things moving in the direction I really want them to? I know I've been working at this for years, but has what I actually want changed over time? And if it has changed, but you've ignored that part, then the Nine of Wands becomes the Ten of Wands, and the Ten of Wands becomes incredibly difficult and brutal. So you get up to the top of the mountain successfully, but you're injured in some way. And so that Nine of Wands moment before was incredibly important to question whose banner you're waving, whose allegiances you have, and if you're sort of working for the right, quote unquote team. When you're in the Ten of Cups, this is the point where, just like with the Nine of Cups, will you accept abundance into your life? Will you emotionally accept these good things in? Will you allow them to come to be? Because if you do, they're all going to be there. Well, with the Ten of Cups, if we allowed that in, then the Ten of Cups means we'll be surrounded by other people, which then multiplicatively increase the prosperity of our life, and vice versa. We'll increase that for them as well. And so this is something that could be really beautiful. Or if we didn't accept that nine, then of course we might not be surrounded by the right people. And then of course the Ten of Coins, you've successfully achieved something back at the Nine of Coins if you had successfully planned what it is that you really wanted. Now, in the last one, we were talking about the 10 of the minor arcana and how they're all connected to the Wheel of Fortune. So if we have balance between the 10 of Swords, 10 of Wands, 10 of Cups, and 10 of Coins, we allow them all to come together, we'll be able to face the Wheel of Fortune in a positive way. And in a way, we're then brought back to the beginning, back to the aces. The 10 is the 1 plus the 0 equals 1, just sort of following that numerological rule. So as soon as we've ended a journey, we've begun a new one. As soon as you graduate high school, you begin college. As soon as you graduate college, you begin real-world applied experience. As soon as you begin that job, or as soon as you get to the highest point of that job, then you begin a new iteration of the job or a promotion of some kind. So no matter what, you will always perpetually be on a quest towards mastery. And as soon as you get there, you hopefully let yourself become the student again so that you can prosper and become even more. And that's how the 10 works. Now that you've moved through the first 10 of the major arcana, and of course the 50 minor arcana that are before it, all we're left with now is just the remaining major arcana and the court cards. Court cards is what we're going to be doing first, because this essentially, in a way, is a hyper-stratified version of the original story that we were following with the 1 through 10, but it takes place more so in the form of us as a child, us as a teenager, and us as the sort of divine masculine or divine feminine in their mastery or in their adulthood, metaphorically. So, so you've got Page, the way that we handle things within our inner child, the Knights, which is our sort of inner teenager in a way, and then of course the Queen and King, which is the mastered feminine and mastered masculine, and being able to embody those parts of ourselves and understand how they work together. Hey guys, so for this tarot hack we're going to be talking about the court cards, but in this particular case we're going to get into the pages. When it comes to the page ideal in the tarot, it often represents the child within, or the child self, but almost more specifically it's the student within us that's really activated here. So the pages are always communicating messages back and forth between two forces, and that tends to be the common theme that ties them together. But throughout our life we find the things we're passionate about, the things that we want to do for a living, we develop those skills, we become masters of them, and yet even though we're in sort of that role of master in that particular area, every time we've stepped out of our comfort zone or out of our skill set, we're back into the role of page again. And so, for example, someone might be incredibly successful in their career, but not really understand how to have a conversation with someone or how to, communicate in a relationship setting. Whereas they're completely proficient and, like a master of a different trade or a different field that they focused on. So, in the Page of Swords, for example, this is going to be an area in which we've stepped out of our intellectual zone of comfort, and we've received some new information that is really troubling to us, or really difficult to handle, or that we have to deliver in a particular way. So whether it's that there's a sensitivity about, should I even say anything, or in what way do I need to deliver this message, Page of Swords is always going to bring up the energy of communicating in an idea or keeping it to yourself entirely. And then with Page of Wands, this of course is more of the action and career side. This is stepping out of our comfort zone in a way where we have succeeded in some way often. Page of Wands comes right after the Ten of Wands. So we've succeeded at something, and we, perhaps it's a promotion, and now we actually have to do the thing that we were sort of, hoping to get to in the first place. And that at that point, it's terrifying. So, the Page of Wands, you have to sort of face that fear of being outside of what you've currently, been used to, what you've been able to do over time. With Page of Cups, this one is very simply the childlike need for expression. And this is the expression of an emotion, perhaps even one that sort of branches back to childhood, whether it's a feeling of being misrepresented or not heard, or any of these things that we intellectualize as we become adults, but actually branch back to childhood, which were incredibly simple. We literally weren't heard in some way, or we felt we weren't heard. And so that sort of carried with us through adulthood. And then Page of Coins. Page of Coins, we receive information about our finances or changes in them based on some talent that we think might be too good to be true, such as following our dreams and engaging with the child self and the wealth within. Guys, so for this tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Knight energy, which is usually connected to our teenage years or connected to our, early 20s. And with the Knight of Swords, for example, this is often where we are going to have, usually it's embodied as a character who is incredibly intelligent, but he rushes off into battle because he doesn't have real-world applied experience. And because of that lack of experience, he, rushes headfirst and then loses the battle. And it's not because he didn't have the initial talent, it's because he almost relied too much on what he thought he already knew, so he wasn't willing to listen to the sort of the counsel of the Queen or the King of Swords. And so with the Knight of Swords, this is often about, not being arrogant and not rushing headfirst into things, but being able essentially to listen to yourself and trust yourself, but also to be able to listen and trust other people, and that other people might know more than you. And then with Knight of Wands, this is really, the energy of, the natural sort of burgeoning, energy from the, teenage, early 20s years to say, like, I'm officially an adult, I can do anything you can do. Knight of Wands is basically like putting your money where your mouth is, and, needing to put in that work, needing to do so and sort of face the same challenges that the Queen and King have faced in order to get into their position. And then with the Knight of Cups, this is very much about being able to not only speak completely honestly and not through a lens of idealism, but also to be able to recognize when someone else is doing that. And not always will it be intentional, but sometimes people are going to speak through such a lens that, you have to be able to listen to what your gut's telling you and listen to your intuition, and also heed the counsel of the people around you and be able to understand when you're misunderstanding something or when you're looking at something the wrong way. And then with Knight of Coins, this, is very reminiscent of that quote that character is habit long formed and, long kept over time. With the Knight of Coins, this is essentially the energy of really putting in that work, each and every single day with consistency. And whatever that type of work is, this is about doing it over a long period of time and sort of earning the right to sort of step into that adulthood role, earning the right to step into that, place of mastery. And so that is where the Knight energies, if they've applied themselves in these four areas, then of course can step over into the Queen and the King energies. This tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the Queen energy from the court cards, and the Queen energy is going to represent the feminine in its state of mastery. So first of all, we have the Queen of Swords, who is the master of communication, specifically in communicating her thoughts, communicating what it is that she desires, what it is that she expects, and why she expects it, and being able to do so concisely and clearly. So with the Queen of Swords energy, this is often going to come up with a negotiation or a deal, and if it is, then this is a really good sign, because the Queen of Swords is very clear about knowing what it is she wants, why, and why it is it makes sense for her to have what she wants. Rather than being, conditioned by society or parental influences to keep quiet about what she wants, she speaks it clearly and proudly. And then, of course, we've got the Queen of Wands. Queen of Wands is going to be the energy of this sort of the boldness of the feminine and the ability to sort of bring forth the fire and to do so proudly and with strength. So Queen of Wands is often a card that is about hard work, but not so much just the mechanics of hard work. It's more so about being able to make something out of ingredients that don't necessarily match up, being able to make something out of a bad situation, and always being industrious and moving forward even when it would be easier to wait for some other force to bring in a solution to a problem. So the Queen of Wands tends to solve her own problems and to be very strategic about that. And then of course we have the Queen of Cups, who is incredibly endowed with the psychic energy and with strong empathic abilities. However, because of those incredibly strong empathic abilities, she also has to make sure she doesn't get caught up in other people's emotions. So being able to feel them, receive them, empathize with them, and work with a person in some way, especially in the role of healing, but not getting caught up with or being distorted herself by other people's emotions. And then finally, the Queen of Coins. Queen of Coins is going to be the energy of, over a lifetime, bringing forth some type of empire, and whether that's an empire that she has shared with the sort of king archetype, or whether that's one she's created herself, the Queen of Coins is crystal clear about what it is that she wants in the future, and she makes it happen over the span of decades. So she brings this vision to life. Think back to the Nine of Coins and figuring out what we really want. Once she did that, she stuck with it for decades of time and finally mastered it and became the Queen of Coins. This is Jax, and for today's tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the King energy as far as the final part of the court cards. And so for the King energy, this is basically the heightened, mastered masculine. So with the King of Swords, for example, remember back to the Knight of Swords, the naturally brilliant character who, through his arrogance, made some sort of grand folly, some sort of mistake because he didn't listen to the counsel of the previous Queen and King of Swords. So the King of Swords character is one who was able to listen to themselves and listen to the outside counsel, who is able to understand traditional wisdom and understanding as well as more modernized and evolutionary thinking. So it was really important for this King character to be able to do that so that he could ruminate on different situations, especially when objectivity is required, and give an answer that is fair for all people. And then with the King of Wands is essentially the mastered masculine in context to action. And so King of Wands is so powerful through the use of action and through consistency and through doing exactly what it is he said he was going to do, that his reputation begins to precede him. And the interesting thing about King of Wands is it's almost as though it's not suggesting not to communicate things, but act in such a way over such a long period of time that there's some things that you don't even have to say because it's obvious with the almost vibration that you give off and with the way you've handled things in the past. Now with the King of Cups, this is often like the masculine form of emotional empowerment. The King of Cups is not someone who intended to be a place where people would come to him and ask him life's great questions about what we should do philosophically or how we should connect with spirit. But basically the King of Cups wants to help people empower themselves so that they can go on to create their own kingdom. The King of Cups does not want to be needed, and if anything, gives up the power that comes from the illusion of being needed, which some people indulge in. So that's part of his power. And then of course the King of Coins, this is the masculine and the ability to take care of situations and to bring them structure in such a way that your family or metaphorical kingdom is taken care of, so that all things are looked over. The King of Coins is not the energy necessarily of being constantly part of everything in a sort of a sentimental way. There's actually a sacrificial nature almost to the King of Coins, but it's in the positive way where it's the doing what is difficult day after day to create a legacy or create a kingdom that lasts over time, that spans multiple generations in the future. So that is the King energy. Hey guys, this is Jax, and for this tarot hack, we're going to be looking over what we've covered so far. So we have covered the 1st through the 10th major arcana, as well as the minor arcana that are correlated with them. We've covered now the court cards, and all that remains is the 12 remaining major arcana. And so the interesting thing about the next video where we start talking about them, we start getting into them, is that with the remaining major arcana, they all come in groups of 3. So we have the Strength card, which leads to the Hanged Man, which leads to death. Those 3 in that particular order. Then leading into Temperance, which leads to the Devil, which then leads to the Tower. And then, of course, we have the Star, which leads to the Moon, which leads to the Sun. And then we have Judgment, which leads to the Universe, and then leads to the Fool. The first triplet of the major arcanas that are remaining, we have Strength, the Hanged Man, and then Death. And so how exactly do these sort of like archetypes occur in our life, and how do they present? Well, for the Strength card, this is the point we're at the 11 numerology here. This is the point at which we have to make a choice. We have to make a choice if we are going to will ourselves to aim towards the goal that we know that we can meet somewhere deep down. Even if we feel it's tremendous in size or in its power or in its difficulty or in its likelihood we're going to fail, the Strength card is about the clarity of knowing that you can push forward and become a part of the very thing that you're going to change. So with the Strength card, for example, this often depicts a woman who has, several lions or tigers around her, and the concept is not that she hunted and killed these giant cats, instead that she basically was able to find that wildness within herself, and she was able to live alongside these wild beings, these wild animals, having mastery over them instead of having dominance over them. And so that, of course, taking place also as an internal journey. Now, once we do that, of course, once we make the decision to aim for that which we know we can do, to aim for the sacred task of our lifetime, we then face the Hanged Man, because the Hanged Man means that along the journey there's going to be suffering, and we will have to accept that suffering is going to occur. We will have to accept the parts hidden within ourselves along the journey, and it's going to be very difficult to face that, and that will, of course, through that process, lead to the death of our old self. It allows us, just as the child dies as the teenager is born, and the teenager dies as the adult is born, and the adult dies as the elder is born, literally that happens in all stages of our life. But with the Hanged Man as an example, you take Odin, who hung himself from the Yggdrasil world tree for 9 days and 9 nights so that he then could allow his previous self to die, and the divine within him was awakened, and he was able to see the runes within the world. So the Death card, which sounds so terrible, is actually the most optimistic thing we can aim for. Hopefully the version of us we currently are can die so that this new version of us, the version of us we really are capable of being, can be born. Because you can't have both. You can't skip to rebirth. You can't skip to reinvention. You must allow the things that aren't to pass before basically the things that are can rise up. So that is the first triplet of these major arcanas that we're going to be going through for the rest of the tarot. Hack, we're going to be talking about the Temperance card, the Devil, and the Tower. So last time what we had talked about was the Strength card, which is, the choice that we have to become strong, the choice to do the things that we know are going to make us strong, and the choice to embody strength itself. And then, of course, the price tag for that being the Hanged Man, meaning that we're going to have to recognize the suffering that we're going to have to go through. And then, of course, it is through that recognition that we can transcend that suffering. Now, the Death card, of course, is the result of that, which is the death of our past self so that this new self that we are can be born. However, what happens after that is then the Temperance card. So the Temperance card is our ability to transmute what it is that we go through in the external world now into something beautiful, to take the difficult situations or to even take suffering, and rather than just thinking of it as suffering for the sake of suffering, turning it into something beautiful and basically bringing meaning to something that may have not had meaning before, or allowing ourselves to at least experience the power of that, the power of the potential meaning that we can find in the most difficult situations we go through. And then, of course, to do that, we then have to face the devil, which, of course, the internal devil within is representative of the choices that we make to stay chained to a particular person who is manipulative, or to stay chained to a particular situation. But in the end of the day, it is up to us to leave that situation behind and to say no more, and to create our new lifestyle for ourselves by leaving behind the things that we know are going to put us down that path. And if we do that, it leads to the tower. So the tower is analogous to death in the sense that the death card was this internal card that was suggesting that we have to go through some sort of metaphorical, shamanic journey. And then the tower card is going to be the sort of results in the outside world. This is going to be the change of a career path that we're going through, or a change of relationship, or a change of friendship. So there's a lot that happens in this tower card, but the devil and the tower are often referred to as negative cards, that they're bad cards to get. They're bad omens, and it's just not the case. It's actually representative that it represents that you've actually started to work on the temperance energy. You've started to work on transmuting the things in life that are so difficult into things that have meaning and things that can help you prosper. So there's a lot of power in these three major arcana. And next time we're going to be going over the second to last video, where we go over some more of the major arcana. And then, of course, I'm going to compile all these videos together into one tarot hack video on my YouTube channel. So make sure and subscribe at Jax Atlantic. Hey guys, so for this tarot hack, we're going to be talking about the star, the moon, and the sun, and the fact that these three cards are correlated with each other. So if we start back at the strength card, and we make the decision that we're going to take on basically our greatest life path, that we're going to use the power of our will in order to create a new future for ourselves. And then we face the hanged man, and we understand the suffering that we're going to have to transcend in order to be able to do that. And we allow ourselves to experience the death state. From the death card, we allow that old version of ourself to die. And then, of course, we find the temperance energy in the temperance card, where we can then transmute the external things that happen in this world with the power of our will, and with the power of our patience, and the power of our inner knowing. And then, of course, that brings us to face the devil, which facing the devil then creates a tower moment in our life because of all of the different situations and people we were chained to. Now, after that tower moment, and after all of that destruction, then of course we require healing. This is the point in the star where we then have to choose the path that is actually going to be the path that heals us. And in order to do that, as we start to take this path of healing, as we start to make sure that we have what it is we need after the absence and loss of so many different things, we face the moon. We have to face our own internal shadow. That the people of this world that we, had all these different experiences with, that they weren't the thing that was holding us back, that essentially we were the thing that was holding us back. Our choices, our own shadow within, the things that were hidden and buried deep, the ways in which we sabotaged ourselves, the ways in which we chose particular people that we knew were going to behave in a certain way. Somewhere deep down, we knew that this was a person that was subtractive in nature for our journey, and in context to our journey. And if we face the moon, if we face this internal shadow, then of course we can find our way to the sun. And facing the sun represents allowing ourselves to then be revealed. And the light of the sun isn't just revealing joy and reasons to feel happy. The light of the sun is revealing the truth. It's revealing the full canvas and showing the full picture. So there is responsibility that has to be taken from that picture, not just other characters and the way in which they've interacted with our lives. And so with the sun energy, the reason it's so powerful in its celebration is because this represents this divine freedom that we're giving ourselves by ironically giving ourselves the responsibility of ownership, giving ourselves the responsibility of ownership of this journey so far and the way that we've gone through our life. Now in this tarot hack, we're continuing from where we just left off with the sun, and we move on to what happens after we've had this revealing light cast over our entire lives, cast over the choices that we've made, cast over the reasons why we made those choices, and also our ability to now feel this unconditional love for ourselves and for other people because we addressed the moon, because we addressed the shadow. So what happens after that? Well, judgment. Basically, this is the moment where we finally are able to cast our judgment about what our life has been and about what we want for our life in the future. The judgment energy is one where we have to take on the bravery of being able to call it as we see it, to open the door to what it is that we want and to close the door to the things that we know no longer work for us. And that, of course, by doing that leads to the universe. This is the sacred ultimate abundance. It's the sacred closing. It's the ultimate mastery. It's where, just like, remember in The Magician, that's where we had, in the very beginning, the four corners of our potentials, the four areas in life where we could expand. Well, the universe is representative of expanding in all four areas, making those choices, being able to find ourselves in that state of abundance. And after the universe, the final major arcana, comes the Fool. Now, I treated in this Tarot Hack series the Magician as the first card of the tarot, and I treated the Universe as the last card of the tarot. And the Fool is often treated as the very first card because it's card number 0. So they think, the Fool, of course, number 0, and then it goes to the Magician. Well, you might make the argument that the Fool is 0 because it is this nebulous in-between point of the Universe and the Magician, mastery and then potential. And what happens in the Fool is essentially every time we reach mastery through the Universe, every time we've found this sacred abundance, this sacred version of ourselves, that basically the external world matches what it is that we know we really are in the internal world, then we reach the Fool, which is open-mindedness towards the new journey. So you imagine, if you had graduated with a master's in business in the year 1995, and you said, well, my education's complete, I've graduated, I'm done, and then you think of all the technological changes that have happened to the field of business, and you imagine not stepping into the Fool, not becoming the Magician again, not learning more, how limited and stifled your understanding of the world would be, and in this particular case, business. At the same time, if you reach the Universe and then happily step into the Fool energy, and then of course this leads you to a new Magician state, that is where you can then take on your true new potential. Thank you guys for having tuned into this Tarot Hack series. I hope that this has helped your connection to the tarot, and it's broadened some of the ideas and the way that you look at the connections between the cards. If any of you are interested in checking out the full series, you can of course see it here on TikTok, but on my YouTube channel I'm also going to have a full compilation video where all of the tarot hacks are compiled into one place. So make sure to go to Jax Atlantis to see my YouTube channel. And for any of you who want to go further into the tarot, I've got a 12-hour masterclass at jaxatlantis.com where I go in much more depth about each and every one of the tarot cards and all of the different connections they have, as well as their conventional and elemental and astrological meanings. So if you guys want to check that out, go to jaxatlantis.com or go to my YouTube channel, Jax Atlantis. Thank you guys.